Everyone, welcome to a special edition of Independent Artists Unite song series. Wayward is here today. Welcome, my friends.
Hey, thanks
We're
for having me
we're
back.
we're going to talk about your concept album, Uncult, which as a fan, I just want to thank you for because this is the kind of stuff that I grew up on. These like thematic albums, which for me, it actually, I don't know, embarrassingly, well, or appropriately for today's topic, started with Jesus Christ Superstar.
There you go.
And
Perfect.
then it was like Rush 2112, for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned as well that you were influenced by Pink Floyd and Nine Inch Nails when
Yeah.
you were approaching this. But yeah, I wanted to have you on today to just talk about the overall topic, which you've stated is this um, where a person becomes kind of like indoctrinated into a religion and becomes disillusioned and then leaves.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's a crazy thing, and I think it happens to a lot of people. So um yeah, let's chat about it. I love it. By the
Yeah,
way, Jesus
I'm
Jesus Christ Superstar recently saw the new tour of that
oh
show a couple of years ago, and it was fantastic. So
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of I have I grew up with I've said this a million times on this show, but I grew up with my oldest sister was like a player piano. She just sat down, she could play anything, and she knew. And plus, we had the sheet music to Jesus Christ Superstar, and I have four sisters, and they instantly go into four-part harmony, singing
mhm.
with each other. They've done that their whole lives, but then I got to this like says something about the struggle within me. I got to play both Judas and Jesus Christ
Yep. Perfect.
because I was
Yeah,
the
that's
only boy
great.
in the family, so I was
Yeah.
confused right out of the gate.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
A
I
constant struggle between good and evil.
Yeah, I recently went and borrowed my dad's original vinyl, of the recording with Ian
Mhm.
Gillan as
Oh yeah,
Jesus Christ, like
yeah,
listening to that on vinyl. So,
yeah. The
um,
brown box with the
yep,
gold.
yep,
That's the one we had. And
yep,
and Crazy came with a booklet of all the lyrics and all that stuff.
yeah,
And that was always like a huge part of it for me with like concept albums was like this booklet, and
yeah,
pictures and stuff like that. It would be maybe you can do a special edition of Uncult on vinyl with
yeah.
a pamphlet and everything. It'd be
There we
cool.
go. I'll consider it.
But like, are you willing to go into like your personal experience that inspired this whole thing, or how deep
Yeah,
are you willing to go? Because
yeah.
I think it's helpful for people to talk about it. And then, as I said, I had like a similar experience recently, and but I'll talk about that after you tell your story.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could even just like run through the EP a little bit because it really
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Let's take it song
follows
by
the
song.
story,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, the EP starts out with a song called Opening.
Hmm.
And the whole thing is a very serious EP with a whole like undertone of like tongue-in-cheek sarcasm also from
Hmm.
myself.
Yeah.
And so, like, I was born and raised in the like Mormon church. I live in Utah, born and raised, lived in it for decades. Um, and every meeting you go to, everything you do starts with like a song, an opening hymn is what they
Mm,
call it. And
yeah.
so I was like, okay, well, obviously the first song on this EP has to be like the opening hymn
Yeah.
of the whole thing. And so that song just starts out, and the whole idea behind it is like this person is devoted, right? I mean, like one of the main lines of the thing is like, I know that this is the only truth. Like
Mm.
Nothing else out there matters. This is it. And very much the way things are, or the way things were for me and for many others, like in that religion, is like, this is it. We have a monopoly on like what's right and what's true. And so it just goes through this idea of like very zealous devotion,
Yeah.
blind faith, not questioning anything because this is it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
too, if you're a kid and you're brought up, you don't question it. This is like a part of
right,
your childhood. You're just right.
right. And you're exactly right. And in this whole thing, as a kid, in this religion, they have like on a regular basis in their meetings, you get up and like profess your faith. Like anybody can just like
Mm.
stand up and be like, here is my like testimony or my faith of like this religion or whatever.
Mm.
And kids that are like 5, 6 years old, they'll get up there, but they don't say anything. Their parents are like whispering into their ear
Mm.
like what they should say, you know?
Yeah.
And so 100% you're like, you are taught and indoctrinated from a very young age of like, this is true. And yeah, kids are impressionable, obviously. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And it too is like I was just thinking when you were saying that, it's such a setup to be a kid coming through that because all kids need is unconditional love. And then right out of the starting gate, this is conditional love. It's like you are
Yep.
loved if you stand up and do a good speech. You are loved if you keep
Yes.
going to church. You are loved if this, if you're good, if you're that.
Yep.
And so it's such a from the get-go, it fuck will fuck up a kid for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. 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 So yeah, I mean, that's just the whole premise of the first track opening on the EP is just like 100% devotion and like zealotry towards this thing that that you've grown up in, that you were taught. I mean, and it's interesting because a lot of times you talk about cults or religions or whatever, and somebody gets like sucked into it when they're in their you know 20s and they're trying to figure themselves out and all that
Mm,
kind of thing. And this is very different for me because like I said, I was born in it. Like I
yeah.
lived in this for 35 years.
Mm,
Like this
wow.
was the
Yeah.
thing for a very good chunk of my life. And
Mhm.
so it's a little bit different, but at the end of the day, like we'll get through the rest of the EP and you'll hear more about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
So and then and then you jump to the next track, and I think this track is called Shelved, and
yeah. Hmm.
I actually think it was probably the first track I wrote for the EP, was this one,
Okay.
and it was and I wanted to have this like juxtaposition of this person who's this who's religious, but they're starting to like read things on the internet, or they're
Mm,
starting to like see a
yeah.
different perspective that they didn't have before, and then they're
Like
starting to ask
doubt is creeping in a
questions.
little bit.
Yeah, doubt is creeping in. They're starting to ask questions. They're starting to be like, wait a minute, this isn't what I was taught, or this isn't what I have believed all my life.
And
What's going on here?
and not only that, I don't know if this is true in the Mormon thing, but in the thing that I had with this teacher, it was based on the Kabbalah, right?
Mhm.
And so it's actually like doubt is called Satan. That's like
Okay.
is their word like Satan, but
Yeah.
except they say Satan, but it's like any doubt is Satan already. That's your ego taking over, or that's
Right.
Satan coming in. So like
Yep.
even to doubt in your own mind, you already feel like you're failing and headed towards worthlessness, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And there's very specific things that were like taught that essentially, a really big thing, maybe like 10 years ago was this quote from this leader in the church that was like, doubt your doubts, not your faith. Like if these doubts
Mm,
creep in, just doubt those. You don't need to doubt like your faith. So there's all sorts of things like that are like,
mm,
no, this is strange. So and for me growing up, you know, when I was when I was a kid and I was going into my teenage years, the internet wasn't a big thing yet.
mm,
And so they could kind of like gatekeep the information as well,
mm.
right? You didn't really have this
Oh,
opportunity
interesting.
to
Yeah.
go find any information, right? It was
Mm,
like you had the information that was given to you, and it was really hard to find anything else. And you were also very much discouraged from reading anything that wasn't
yeah.
given to you by them, right?
Approved
Big time,
literature. Yeah.
big time cult tactic for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
But it's very interesting. I
Um,
didn't think about that you're growing up as the internet comes along, because there must be, you're not alone for sure,
yeah,
where your
yeah,
generation suddenly is exposed to being able to get all this knowledge. And so there must be
yeah,
a lot of disillusioned youth there
absolutely. I
in
think
religions like that.
I think my generation within this religion is having a very hard time right now with what they
Mm,
grew up with. So,
yeah, yeah.
um, but yeah, the song shelved. When I wrote it, I was like, I need to have this person who's starting to see things, who's starting to question, and then I needed to have a different voice, and I wanted it to be like the voice of God or the voice of like a
Mm,
religious leader or whatever.
hmm
And that was when I brought Ruin the Mind in
hmm
to do the guest vocals on that song
Yeah,
because
that's so good. Yeah.
um, he had just released his track God Stomp,
Hmm
and I was listening to that and I was like, this is so good. And then I was like, this is my voice of God because it was again a little tongue in cheek, a little sarcastic, right? To bring this person in who has very similar thoughts and feelings as I do, and
hmm
then have them be like God on my song. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yeah, this song obviously starting to question things, and it's something that I don't know if this is like a term that really is used outside of like people who leave the Mormon church or not, but there's this idea of like taking these thoughts and putting them on a shelf,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
Like
Yeah.
out of sight, out of mind, right?
Mm.
If you have a doubt, if you have a question, let's just put that on the shelf and we'll worry about it
Wow.
later,
That's very
right?
interesting because it's sorry that I keep interrupting you, but I'm
You're
fascinated
good. You're
by this
good.
whole thing because because I got sober in AA 20 years ago, and this is a term in AA,
Okay.
and I was told AA is really, of course, they don't go around advertising this, but I'm told that many of the things in AA were influenced by the Mormon religion.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. 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 So like this whole put it on the shelf thing, right? You have a question, you have something come into your mind that doesn't jive with the truth.
Mm,
And you just set that aside. You put it on the shelf. We'll worry about it later. Everything with the Mormon church is very much centered around like the afterlife. We'll
mm,
worry about that in the next
mm,
life,
mm,
right? You don't need to worry about it right now. And so, yeah, it's just this idea of like, um, don't question, doubt your doubts. If a doubt creeps in, put it on the shelf
mm.
and keep moving forward. And so that was like the message that I wanted to kind of start getting across in that song. But
Yeah.
you start to feel that tension with with the different voice and the feeling of the song of just
Mhm.
there's some tension here, right? Um, Yeah, and then you jump into track three, which is called Broken. And
Mm.
Broken is uh what what a lot of people will talk about of my shelf got full. And there
Mm.
was finally this one last thing that I put on the shelf, and it broke that shelf, and everything just came crashing down, and I
Mm.
realized that it was all a
Mm.
lie. right? And for a lot of people, it really is like one thing. They can point to this was the thing
Mm,
that broke my shelf and my faith was gone.
mm.
Um, and so
Well,
it's interesting.
what was that for you?
For me, I think it was a little bit less about a single item for me, but really what finally just pushed me out completely was, the Mormon church is very much as much as they claim they aren't. They are very much against and unkind to like the LGBTQ community.
Mm,
And I just have far too many people in my life that I
mm,
love and that I respect and that I know are great people that are a part of that community. And
mm,
I couldn't be a part of that anymore.
yeah.
So yeah. Um,
Can I
but
ask you
yeah,
something? Did it have to do with the things like the tenets themselves of like the religion and the teachings, or were you also like looking at personalities, like certain I don't know what they call them, ministers
yeah.
or
Well, different leaders,
oh, different
bishops.
leaders, yeah.
Yeah, like
Was it
there's
a bit of like looking at their behavior and social situations or something like that and thinking, that's not that's not part of the teaching? Like, was that?
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, 100%. I think that, if we're talking about like shelf items, probably one of the first things for me that was like really got me thinking and really got me like questioning was I early on in like my career outside of music, I had an opportunity to work with a lot of people from a lot of different places,
Mm,
which didn't really happen before, right? Like I grew up
mm,
in the middle of northern Utah. When I was growing up, it was like, I don't know, 85, 90% Mormon, right?
mm,
Like that's just what it was. And all of a sudden, I start working with these people that are from the East Coast or they're from, the Midwest, and they're really, really genuinely good people
mm,
who are doing good things, and then I would see people really close to me that I'm like, uh, that this is not a good person, right? This is not a good person, but
mhm.
they're gonna go to heaven.
Yeah,
And these people that I know are really extremely amazing people aren't. And
right.
that was the first thing for me that was like, this
Mm,
isn't right.
yeah.
This isn't right. Yeah. So, um, but yeah, um, Broken is an interesting song because when I wrote it, I knew I wanted it to be really heavy. I mean, that's just the whole idea of the song is like
Mm,
everything comes crashing down. You
mm,
recognize that like this thing that you've been devoted to for however many years or decades is not true. It's a lie. You devoted your life to it. You devoted hours every week to it. You paid
mm.
10% of your income to it. Um,
Oh, that's a good deal.
yeah, and then all of a sudden everything comes crashing down and you're angry and it's chaotic and
Mm,
and I actually didn't think that people like I didn't necessarily think that this was going to be a track that people would like on
mm,
the EP because it's very different from most of the other things I've done, right? It's a lot heavier, it's a lot darker, um, and it's been kind of interesting because a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is my favorite song on the
mm.
EP." I've had a lot of people tell me that, and it just surprised me because that's not what I expected. So, yeah.
And speaking of the Pink Floyd influence, you rip an excellent solo in this one.
Oh yeah, yeah, appreciate it.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah. There's just something about like the Pink Floyd like reverbed and delayed guitar solos that are just all over all of their albums that
Yeah.
I just
Well,
Yeah,
and it's always adding like a new great melody, you know. I mean,
right. Yep,
your solos are always doing that too, like serving the song, you know what I mean?
right. Yeah.
Whereas,
No, I
whereas,
appreciate that.
yeah, where many,
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it feels required versus like I need to have a solo on this song versus like, oh, this is going to enhance the story, right? Like, so yeah. Um, yeah, so that's track three. Everything comes crashing down.
Mhm.
It's a little chaotic. It's very angry. Um, I I usually record my vocals in my closet because that's where I can get the best sound, and I don't have anywhere with like any soundproofing or anything like that. So
Mhm.
it was probably strange in my house as I'm just like in the closet screaming. Um, but I've not done that heavy of like screaming vocally before.
Mm.
And so it was all
Yeah,
interesting putting that together.
yeah. Yeah, I love that one too.
Hmm, hmm.
But I have to say, I just want to tell everyone that like go and get this at Bandcamp and sit down and read the lyrics with it because even though I knew what it was about, when I heard it and weren't looking at the lyrics, I was substituting certain words, you know, that I couldn't understand very well, and to like see the actual words, they're so much better than my
Right.
substitute words. So it was really great. It's I re highly recommend that to listen to this and have the lyrics right in front of you. It's so good.
Yeah, and I probably like actually need to get my act together and get the lyrics out on, all the streaming services, but sometimes I
Yeah,
have a
well,
hard time just keeping up with like putting out music and all the content you have to create around it, and
yeah, well,
I
it's
skip
not
over
cheap to get
things.
the lyrics on
Right.
Spotify and everything. Jeez.
Right. Right.
As if
But
it's
yeah,
not a bad enough deal. Speaking of cults,
seriously, yeah, I'm having all sorts of anger issues with distributors and
uh,
streamers and everything else right
mm,
now. But yeah, all the lyrics are out there with the tracks on Bandcamp, so you can see it all there for sure. Yep.
so yeah, after you've been broken,
Yeah, so
health has been broken.
we jumped to track four, which is called Ruin.
Mm,
And this is definitely the most personal song to me on the EP. I would actually say the first three tracks are, you know, based loosely on my experience, but
mm,
they're probably more real for other people that I've interacted with and spoken with and learned from in this whole situation, and
mm,
maybe weren't necessarily specific to my experience.
mm,
But track four and five, Ruin is me in this situation for sure. This is essentially a song about spending 3.5 decades in something that you believe,
mm,
that your whole family is a part of and is still a part of, being taught a lot of things about what you will or won't get in the afterlife, and
mhm,
then realizing that none of that was true.
mm,
And I, I had a couple of like months of really, really dark times in my
mm,
life after I finally like decided to leave and decided to go. And Ruin is just this song about like, what the hell is the point of being a human on
mm.
Earth if none of this was true and now I have no idea what the point of anything is?
Yeah. It's like there's no ground anymore, right?
Right. Yeah.
just like float. You're about to fall on the ground, but you're just kind of floating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's those were some dark days
Mm,
for sure.
Can I ask you?
And
I forgot if did you get married off to a nice Mormon girl along the way as well, or no?
yeah,
You did,
yeah,
yeah.
yep, yeah, yeah. So I mean, we did the whole thing, married young, and I mean that's a whole thing too. But luckily, it
Yeah.
all worked out, and things are good. So
And
um,
so she made the jump with you?
yeah, not completely at the same time, but pretty close together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so things are great there for sure, and that's a whole other facet of this whole thing is a lot of times one person makes the jump and the other one doesn't,
That's what I'm
and
wondering about. Yeah.
that's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough. So sometimes it's fine, and sometimes they can keep things together, and other times it's you know you grow apart, and that's how it is. But
And
luckily
yeah,
for me, it's we grew together, so that
yeah,
was good.
yeah. Is there like kind of matchmaking done in the Mormon church? Like, hey, what about
Not
Lucy May over there? She's
not anything like formal for
yeah.
sure, but oh yeah, I mean, growing up, it was like you were taught like, yeah, don't date people that aren't Mormon. Don't you don't want to get married to somebody who's not Mormon, like all that kind of thing. So it was subconscious versus like any formal like you're going to marry this person, but absolutely like there were definitely people who were like, oh, this person's single, you should, you know what I mean, you should date
Mm-hmm.
them. And yeah, yeah, definitely happens. So but yeah, I think in when you listen to Ruin and you there's not a lot of vocals on that one, but they are definitely the most meaningful to me
Mm,
personally on the EP. Um, a lot of questioning, like the main line in the song is like, "Do I live? Do I die? Do I care?"
mm,
I mean, that was the mind frame that I was in
yeah,
um, through all of this. So yeah, a rough one.
yeah, yeah.
But and then the last track on the EP released again the title is a little tongue in cheek. It's a little sarcastic. In the religion, everything is kind of like volunteer based. You teach classes or you do things within the meetings, and it's all kind of like volunteer based, but you're like called, right? So like the leader of your congregation is like, hey, you're being called to teach this class or whatever. And when you get to the end of that and they decide that you're going to move on to something else, they like release you from that calling, right? And so the title for this track is Released because
Mm,
I wanted it to be like I have been released from it all,
yeah, yeah.
right? And so this track is actually intended to be happier. It's happy. The idea behind it is like making your way out of that dark space and just
Mm,
realizing and recognizing that moving forward, I get to be happy
mm,
based on what I want and based
mm,
on me being in control of how I want things to be versus anybody else telling me what it needs to be. And so, I wrote it that way to feel like the music I make, but to be a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more fun, and the lyrics are essentially kind of taking that control back and getting to be your own person and getting to be happy about that. And then the very end of the track, I kind of this is where my Nine Inch Nails influences came in, especially their album Year Zero. Almost every single track on that album has like the song with vocals and all this thing, then there's like a minute at the end of every song that's just like some sort of like instrumental
Mm,
like thing. And so I just want it to be like this dance party, like
mm.
things are good. I came at it on the other side and I'm happy. And now we're just gonna like have a little goth dance party at the end. So yeah, that's the idea behind
Yeah,
the concept EP.
yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you had the courage to to do this, and it's. I'm just wondering, what were there any consequences to doing this? To like relatives hear it and be like, you're going to hell for this dude. You know?
Uh, so yeah, I don't share any of this with like relatives. I don't
Mm,
know that any of my relatives even know that like this music exists.
mm,
Um, it's actually been like a hard part of promotion. I don't get the family streams,
yeah.
right? I don't get the people who are just going to stream it even if they don't like it because it's you. Because you know, I don't know that any of my relatives even know that I'm making this music, which
Mm,
is different for me. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know how they would feel. It would cause some problems at family dinners for sure.
What about friends? Because you also have lifelong friends,
Yeah.
that were in this religion, and was it like, if some friends stayed in the religion, was that just the end of the friendship when you left, pretty much? Are you still in touch with people?
Uh, Not, yeah, I mean, we're not in touch with a lot of people that are still
Yeah.
like really in it. I mean, we're
It's like a bad
cordial and
breakup, right?
yeah, we're cordial. And if we see them, things are fine. But, we've built our own little community of friends of people who have left.
Yeah.
So we all kind of understand each other and,
Yeah, I
and
was
that
going to
type
ask you
of
about
thing.
that too. There must be good
Yeah.
support there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a nice little community of people that we've been able to kind of put together close to us. To just yeah, you got to have that
Yeah.
for sure.
Do
So
you guys have like meetings of your own where you just get together? Anything scheduled, or it's just you just know we got each other's backs here?
yeah, I mean we have a group of folks that we get together with on a pretty regular basis, not to specifically talk about anything
Yeah.
or anything like that. It's just this group that we know that we can go have a good time with
Yeah.
um and and we're all like-minded and that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, this is, well, it spoke to me when it came out anyway, more for like it was a like I said, that I love the idea of a concept album. I've always loved that. But yeah, I went back to this EP and I'm like, fuck, I just went through this exact same thing, where I had this yeah, like I said, I had this very strange thing where I had, was working for this guy, but he was also a spiritual teacher, and he had worked for, I mean, he had gone to Jerusalem for 12 years and studied with this Kabbalah teacher that is been a Kabbalah teacher for 15 generations, if you can
okay.
imagine. 15 generations. And he was just like very much like it's like some things that you said, like the certainty, like no, this is da 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 da. And I told him a little bit where I've been, because I had this whole, near death experience and this whole kind of metaphysical weird woo woo thing that like came out of that, and I kind of latched on to a couple of teachers, over the internet, and I was talking to him about these concepts, and he was just, no, that's not it. No, 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 that's not wrong. It's like this. Da, 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 da. And I just thought, well, let me just see,
Right.
let me just see how it goes. And then it was the things. Then I started putting things on the shelf. I love that. I love that analogy
Yep. There you go.
because I could see from my own experience in the past with women and like being like a sex and love addict, that I could see that he had the same problem, and I could see he couldn't even hide it when he's in front of women. He said he can't stop himself from saying something inappropriate, that just goes kerplunk in the middle of the conversation. And I'm just like,
Yep.
uh,
Yeah.
you know. And so that started happening. And then it was this whole thing of the ego. And like I said, of them of Kabbalah, it's called Satan. This thing of like
Hmm.
when the ego versus your like the true light in you, and which I appreciate. But then all the way through, he describes himself like he talks about himself and says, "I am the light, I am the disruption." I talk to people and they get it's. I am the disruption. I am the light. And I was like, that doesn't sound good. That's, I mean, if the ego's not involved with that, I don't know what you're talking about, about ego
Yep.
being involved in something. You know what I mean? And so it's like these things started setting up, and then you start thinking, wait a second, I'm actually like living my life by these principles that he's talking about, and he's not. Like you said,
Yep.
like you look at these leaders or so, the church leaders, I mean, like, hey, wait a second, you know,
Yep.
and you think, oh, that's really not. It's like it's unbecoming, this kind of behavior, and you realize, shit, am I doing a better job at this than he is, who's supposed to be my teacher? And I've always wanted a spiritual teacher. That's another thing. It's like that's what got me too, is that I've always been searching, 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 and I thought this is so cool to have one-on-one, attention and one-on-one, and also that he like I don't know if this was a part of the Mormon too, where they like it's almost like well, the whole thing mirrors narcissism as well.
Oh yeah.
Our friend Casey, retro Casey, she
Hmm.
is so sharp on narcissism, and
Yep.
she was like, "Oh yeah, Scott, this is like," and it's like textbook narcissism, where you're like, yeah, if you see people that are unsure, you come in, you say, "Hey, I got the answer," and
Yep.
you get manipulated based on your weaknesses and draw you closer, and then they could start telling you how to do everything, and then the second you question it, you're discarded.
Yep.
That's what happened with this guy. I said he wanted to do a certain thing. Like I broke up with this woman that I was that of, because she was unfaithful to me.
Hmm.
She had like I don't know how many goth dudes, like online romances and whatnot, right? And I was just no,
Hmm.
no, 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 no. And then he's trying to like play matchmaker and set us up with, yeah, yeah, I'm going to have you come here, and she's going to come, and we'll all sit down and learn together. And I just started questioning it, and man, just questioning it triggered him so badly. I don't know if you had this experience too, like with individual church leaders and stuff. It's like when you question something and they really can't handle it,
Oh yeah.
even if I'm just like, I was completely in a calm voice, I wasn't even like speaking as passionately as I am right now. And he couldn't take it, man. He got so
Uh,
aggro with me. And then within this conversation, he said, "I don't think we can learn together anymore. That's it for me." And that was it. And he hung up on me. And I was like, what? And
this is
one of the main things that I loved about the Kabbalah is like is this thing of working on reactivity. To not there's so much about it where you don't you're not reactive, and you pause, and then you respond, and you restrict your behavior to, the ego's behavior to
Hmm.
want to be in fight mode. And I think that's a great teaching, but then I was really looking at that. What? That's pretty reactive to
Oh
hang up
yeah.
on, to fire me as a student and hang up on me. But
Yeah,
then I
it's
realized, talking to Casey too, that's a total narcissist
oh yeah.
tool, to discard.
Yeah.
And then you want them to come back and be like, "Oh, please, 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 I'll do anything, take me
Mhm.
into the fold again, And
Yeah.
it's so
It's
manipulative and so crazy. And I just think, it's all. I think also just the way it mirrors, in the United States, the narcissist in chief that they have right now.
oh, don't
I
get me
mean,
started.
this kind of behavior, it's like the clock is ticking, man.
Yeah.
It's got to be shut down.
Yeah. Your story is interesting because, you talk about like this person is like, oh, I have the truth, right? It's right
Mm,
here.
mm,
But like my story is the same, right? I also had the truth. And but our stories are so similar. Like everything you're saying there, I'm like, yeah, yeah, that sounds familiar. It's like it's all the same. It just depends on which person you're talking to. Or on the earth in general, it just depends on where you were born, right? Like
mm,
the monopoly on truth is geographical.
mm,
Defeat, right?
yeah,
Like if you were born in Utah, most likely you're Mormon and you have that monopoly on truth. But if you're born in Saudi Arabia, you're Muslim and you have that monopoly on truth. Or and so it's those types of things are very interesting because the stories always end up being relatively similar in how things go. Just a different God.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a shame too, because it's like it's I mean, if you like look into the history of any religion, what you can clearly see, like, it's all there, it's a part of history. You can see when humans stepped in and said and did their editing and said, and then now it's
Yep.
going to be like this, and da, 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 da.
Yep.
And now women are worthless, and it's only men. I mean,
Yep.
it's like it's so crazy because there's a record of when this happens, and that people are just making the shit up off the top of their head just to
Yeah.
serve their own needs. And it's also maddening because, like, the core principles of, like, there's also a common denominator of, like, treating people, how you would like to be treated, or these kind of
Yeah.
golden rule things, or treating people with respect, and that we're all equal, and things like that. There's good stuff there, you know what I mean, in
Oh
any
yeah.
religion, but it's like, as soon as over time, humans with a lust for power um, step
Yep.
in, and it just gets more and more perverted until you don't even know how something so crazy has happened.
Right. Yeah, 100%. It's very interesting. Like I'm kind of adamant with the like with Mormonism that like the founder, Joseph Smith, he was assassinated pretty early on in the whole story.
Mm,
And I'm kind of adamant that it all would have died out like in the Midwest as like some crazy sex cult if
mm.
he hadn't if he hadn't have died.
Okay,
I
yeah,
feel like
yeah.
that's the way it was going, right? And then it just
Mm,
kind of like shifted and they really pushed it hard to be a religion. But it all feels the same. It all everything feels the same as far as yeah, like somebody sees that they have an opportunity for some power
yeah.
and then they manipulate it in a way to get that.
And is it like, has it kind of I can imagine. I mean, I think it is for me, just even though I had this like hyper short version of it. but I can already feel like almost like a PTSD kind of thing of like now that if anyone opens their mouth to say anything, I'm like, really? What exactly do you mean by that? You know what I mean? Like, is it, I mean,
Uh,
I can imagine you're having some real trust issues, after.
yeah, and there for sure there is like, if you want to call it PTSD or if you want to call it whatever, it's something that that I will never fully like get over, right? Um, you know, you I catch myself judging somebody in
Mm,
a way that I would have 20 years ago.
mm,
Completely like subconsciously, it just
mhm.
happens, right?
Just
And then I have to be
hardwired.
like, wait a minute, that's what am I even doing? I don't even care about that. Like what that's like not even a thing that I believe in or that I care about or anything. And it's just there.
Yeah,
That happens all the time. And I don't know if it ever won't.
yeah,
It's just ingrained. So
yeah.
there's a
I
lot
forget
of
if you
things like
have
that.
kids or not.
I have a daughter.
You
Yeah.
have not, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
good on you that you got out of there and that
Yeah.
broke this like chain in within a generation. That is like its own miracle right there.
Yeah. Yeah. In
But
fact,
but how do you raise her with like do you introduce her to like any kind of spiritual principles at all, or is it just completely hands off and
yeah, I mean, we're always talking about something. We're always having a
mm,
conversation about like this or that, or how do you make sure that you are making your life experience good, but you're also making other people's life experience a good
mm,
one, right?
yeah,
Um, and what does that look like? And we've never been like, you have to believe what we believe. Like
yeah,
it's totally up to her. But we have a lot of conversations around that kind of thing. We watch a lot of different shows around different cults and different
mm,
things as a family because we enjoy it. And the conversation always just comes back to like you finish some documentary on some craziness, and then you're like, just remember, as you go through life, if somebody comes and tells you that they know everything, just run away, turn the other way and run.
yeah.
Because every time you watch this, there's one person that knows everything, right?
Yeah. And
So,
it too, it's like when that happened to me, it feels so good. It's such a relief when you meet
mhm.
someone and you think, wow, oh God, all right, this is the answer. Now I can just focus on this. It's like it's its own relief, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
To
yeah,
be like, oh, okay. And then
yeah,
it's so disturbing to experience it unraveling.
yeah. I think we want to know the answers, right?
Yeah,
We long to like understand what the hell is going on and why we're here and what the point and
yeah,
purpose is. And so if
mm,
somebody can tell you what that point and purpose is, yeah, I think just inherently we're gonna gravitate towards those kinds of things. It's just
yeah.
it's dangerous.
You know, the biggest, I don't know if you agree with this, but the scariest part about it for me is like, for instance, this guy, the spiritual teacher, he has no idea what he's doing. You know what I mean? He really believes he is the
Mm.
light and he is the disruption. And he believes that he probably believes, oh, wow, he didn't have what it takes. Because he's also telling me, I'm going to be a great teacher. You're going to be you're going to be speaking to thousands. I see it,
Mm.
that because he also has, the power of second sight or whatever, he could see the future, as well.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
It's all interesting for sure. But like your your story is similar to mine. And
yeah,
honestly, I think there's so much of that. They think they know it all and can do it all. There's a lot of shady stuff that happens Mormonism around completely unqualified people giving like advice that should come from a
Advice. Yeah.
therapist,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
right? Marriage
Unsolicited,
advice,
unsolicited
financial
advice. Yeah.
advice. Yeah, yeah. And it's just you're not qualified to do that.
Mm.
Even if you have a mandate from God, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's scary and it's dangerous. And I think people make a lot of very important life decisions based on advice from somebody who has no business giving that advice.
Yeah. And it's so
That's not,
scary too, because of course,
yeah,
like you said, we all want answers. I mean, if someone's
yeah.
comes to you and they're so certain about what you should do, it's like it's that relief, and I mean, it's abusive, you know. And it's really,
Mm-hmm.
I was really shocked, really, at how much it mirrors this like relation, you know, a romantic relationship with a narcissist. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's really crazy. So and I know like even if people that have made it this far watching this, even if you haven't um, you know, experience this kind of religious or spiritual situation, I think pretty much everyone has come up face to face with a narcissist relationship
Yeah.
or someone that has those tendencies, and
Oh yeah.
the same, the very similar. It's a very similar model that plays out, but
Yeah.
yeah. I'm also gotten to the point at where I feel really free and really just happy to be, even though I'm in a rough spot right now, I am happy to just be here without
Mhm.
these crazy thoughts, you know, and
Yeah.
going on and the crazy advice. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I started this Wayward project really as like this opportunity to do exactly what I did with the EP. It was just like I started writing songs and I started writing lyrics and things started coming out that I realized I'd never processed,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I thought things were good. I thought everything was fine. And then like pen to paper, it was like, oh man,
hmm
I don't think I processed this. I don't think I did this in the right way. And so it's
mm,
been extremely therapeutic on top of everything else.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, and I think it's been good to have something to dive into, a community, to join and
yeah,
have it be all about just music and fun and other things versus what I'm used to with community.
mm,
And um, I mean, the one stabilizing thing for me in my entire life has always been music.
mm,
And so
yeah,
to be able to have like this musical community, the things that you do, the things that other people do, the friends that I've made with people that I've never met, maybe I
mm.
will one day.
Mhm.
Um, that's like, yeah, I love this. I love what you do, and I love what like this kind of small community we have does because
Yeah, man.
it helps.
You know, what I wanted to ask you though, the people like the former Mormons that you're friends with, have you gotten any reaction about the EP from them, or have any of them heard it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've shared it with some of them, and it's yeah. I like
Yeah, that
I've shared
must
it
be
with a
kind of
hand.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I've shared it with a handful of close people that I know will enjoy it, and they're just like, oh my, like
Hmm.
this is it. This is
Yeah.
how it went for me, right? In fact, I had somebody in our Instagram community reach out to me and was like, hey, I showed your EP to a coworker of mine who like used to be Mormon, and they
Hmm.
were like blown away by it,
Oh
So
wow. Yeah.
it's just it's
Oh
a it's a
yeah.
pretty common story for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, man, thanks for coming on and walking us through the tracks and walking us through your personal experience on this, man.
Yeah.
I know from just my own experience doing it for a very short time, it's like a very vulnerable thing to talk about, you know, and
Yeah.
yeah, I applaud you for opening up about it. And
Yeah.
it's also helped me, you know, it's also
Yeah.
helped me with my situation here. So,
Yeah. Thanks
yeah,
for
man.
uh thanks for asking me. Thanks for having me
Yeah.
on.
And what do we got next from Wayward here?
Oh, I've got some things coming. So
Oh, I
I
know
have
one thing.
yeah. It's funny. I was watching your interview with James
Yeah,
K Ultra and Pain in the Ass, and he was
yeah.
like, "Hey, you asked him what he's got coming. He's like, I don't know what I can and can't announce, but now that he and I have both been on, I've actually got a remix coming from him on one of the tracks from the EP next month.
Oh,
But
cool. Yeah.
in a week or so, there's a couple of remixes coming from Samuel Echo and Ex Hyena.
Oh,
Uh,
nice. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So those are really great. They're going to be awesome. They're going to get
Oh yeah.
released on.
I'm a huge fan of both of them actually.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm yeah. I love both of them. Yeah.
So those should be coming Friday, this coming Friday.
Oh, nice. Okay.
If I can get the distribution figured out, my distributor sent it to everybody except Spotify.
Oh, all right.
So, that's great. So I'm trying to get that worked out, and I'm hoping it's going to be out on Spotify on Friday, but it'll be everywhere else.
All right.
All the other streaming services, Bandcamp, YouTube.
All right.
Uh, we'll see what happens with Spotify.
Yeah.
But yeah, James did an awesome remix also that I'm really excited to release. And then, I mean, I guess we should just, go ahead and say like you and I have a collaboration track coming out later this year too. So,
Yeah, man. And you know what? The strange thing about it is, I don't know if you picked up on that the lyrics are right out of the Kabbalah, the whole
oh,
idea about that. Yeah.
yeah.
But these are the things like these are the like these pure teachings that I really love,
Yeah.
was this idea of yeah, receiving in order to give, and the idea of giving and being generous and kind of yeah, people working in a cooperative way,
Yeah.
I love that idea, of some kind of neo hippie idea of where we all just help each other, and stop trying
Yeah.
to make more piles of cash than the other person. It's just seeming more and more absurd to me as life goes on. But
Yeah.
as
Yeah. That one's a good one. When I wrote that track, I think I've told you this before. When I was working on that, I was like, I'm not singing on this. Scott's singing on this because I could just hear it. I could just hear
uh,
it when I was putting it together. So yeah, I've got a couple. I've got that single. I've got another single that I'm working on right now. They're kind of, I don't want to say like B-sides, but they were ideas that I laid down while I was writing the Uncult
mm,
EP, and they just didn't fit with the feel that I wanted for it.
uh,
So I've got a couple of things that I'll just kind of put out as singles based on that. And yeah, lots of stuff coming up. I
yeah,
think I'm booked release wise through like July at this point. So lots of stuff
nice.
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, love you, brother. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're such a wonderful part of this community, and love having you on the show. Well, we'll do another show when we do our collaboration. We'll talk more about that.
Yeah. Absolutely. It'll be
That was an
fun.
interesting to try to put something to that music for me, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right, love you, brother.
Okay,
Talk to you
man.
soon.
Yeah, you too. See
Thanks,
ya.
man.